The other thing that's really useful when constructing intros and digital communications overall is to think about the 5 W's and how. So the who, what, where, when, why and how. This is a trick that's used by journalists loads. If you look at most news stories, within the first 2 or 3 paragraphs you should be able to pick out the who, what, when, where, why and how. But they're also quite flexible and can bend to suit your story. So who, it could relate to who is the communication about. This could be yourself, another academic, a research group, a project. What is the communication about? What are the key messages you're trying to get across? What does your reader want to know about? When? Well, this could be past, it could be present, it could be future. When is the subject of the communication taken place? Has it already happened? If so, when did it happen? And what time period does the communication relate to? Where? Well, this could be a physical or a virtual location. It could even be a time frame. Why? Why are you sending the communication? What prompted the sending of the communication? And why are your audience interested in the communication? How did the thing you are communicating about take place? How do your audience know about it? Or how do you want to communicate your message? So the 5 W's and how, they can be quite flexible, they can relate to very different things, but ideally they want to be mentioned as high up in your story as possible, ideally within the first 2 or maybe 3 paragraphs. So you can see from this example here is an intro, or the first 2 paragraphs, and we've got who, Professor Richard Brazier. What? He works on soil erosion. When? The soil erosion is happening during wet winters. Where? It's happening on intensively farmed land. Why? What is he doing? He's helping farmers to change the way they manage the land. That's the whole point of his research. And how? Understanding the effects of landscape restoration on water resources. So you can see from here that they can be bent and moulded, and if you start using the 5 W's and how as a template before you know it, you will do it instinctively. When I picked this example out to use in here, my colleague who wrote it had no idea she'd used the 5 W's and how when she wrote it, because she does it so often. It had just become second nature to her. And then another thing to think about in digital communication is the sort of wider structure of your piece. So once the 5 W's and how have been answered, the rest of the communication is about providing the facts to go with those 5 W's and how. And to use that, we can use a structure called the inverted pyramid. This is another trick used by journalists. And it goes back to the days when newspapers were typeset. And what the pyramid does is it encourages you to put the most important information first. So this will include the 5 W's and how, but then the more general information comes further down. This means that if somebody stops reading after your first paragraph, your second paragraph, your third paragraph, they will still have got the essence of what your story is about. So the reason this was used by newspapers when they were still typesetting newspapers was because if they got a story and it was too long to fit on the page, they could just chop the bottom of the story off and know that they hadn't actually lost any of the meaning of the story, because all of the really important information was at the top. So it's a really good way of making sure that you get the point of your digital communication across, because people probably aren't going to read your whole web page. That's just the way it is. People give very little time to reading off screen. When thinking about writing using the inverted pyramid, it sometimes helps to think of your intro as a conclusion. So you start with the most important piece of information, then an explanation of that really important piece of information, and then more details.